Keynoting is used to standardize the typical notes you have throughout the entire project. It is also used to speed up the placement of notes in your project environment. In this instance, I would like to add keynotes to the typical wall section view, and we can find the typical wall section view under the project browser, Sections, Wall Sections, Typical Wall Section. Once that view is open, click inside of your drawing area, then spin the wheel of your mouse and zoom in toward the top of the wall. There are 3 different kinds of keynotes that we have available, and each of these can be found underneath the Annotate tab on the ribbon. Select on the word Keynote, and here we can find Element Keynote, Material Keynote, and User Keynote. An element keynote is for an entire element, such as a keynote that you'd have associated with a wall. The material keynote would be for each material inside of that wall. Then a user-defined keynote, also called a user keynote, allows you to select a keynote off of the list, and then that keynote will just be the keynote that you can use. In this example, let's start off by clicking on Element Keynote. Now, an example of a wall keynote would also be a wall tag. So this might be W.1, W.5. So wall type and a number. For this project, highlight the wall, click once, then move the keynote over toward the right. Click, then click again. This will bring up the keynote list. And if we wanted to select one of these user-defined keynotes off of the list, we could do that now. For this instance, though, I would like to take the keynote off of the object itself. So to do this, we need to move our cursor down and select on Cancel. You will notice that the keynote tag is still there. Hit Escape a couple of times on the keyboard to get out of the command. Select on the wall. Then come over to Properties. Then select on Edit Type. When you select on Edit Type, it will bring up the Type Properties dialog box. From here, we can see that Keynote is one of the options. Click here where it says Keynote and type in W5. This means this is Wall Type 5. Then move down here to OK and click on OK. When you do that, it will now take the keynote based off of this wall type, and we can see that this is now a W5 wall type. Let's try another kind of keynote. Move our cursor up and select on Keynote, once again from under Annotate, and then Keynote, and pick Material Keynote. Our goal now will be to select on one of the materials and give it an appropriate keynote designation. Move your cursor over and select on this outer layer of material. Click once, move over, click, then click again. Once again, we get this keynote list. And if we knew which kind of material that we wanted on the outside, we could continue to expand out each of these categories and then pick the appropriate kind of keynote off of the list. For this, though, I would like to assign a keynote directly to the material. So much like what we did with assigning a keynote directly to the wall, here we want to assign that keynote to the material. To do this, let's click on Cancel. Then hit Escape on the keyboard a couple of times to get out of the command. Click once on the wall. With the wall highlighted, come up to Edit Type. Then in the Type Properties dialog box, you will notice the word Structure with a big Edit button next to it. Click the Edit button. These are the different layers of material that make up our wall. Where it has material and it says Insulation, click there, then click this button inside of the box. This will bring up our material browser. And the material that is currently there will now be highlighted. If we go to its identity data, we can see that Keynote is one of the options for this material under the identity data. For this, I'm going to keep this simple and just call this EIFS, then click on OK. When I did that, we can now see that for the tag, it says EIFS. If we click OK once more on this dialog box, and OK again, now we have the W5 still for the entire wall, and the EIFS for this exterior insulating material. If we zoom out by spinning the wheel on the mouse, then zoom back in by once again spinning the wheel on the mouse. Let's try to place a tag down here toward the bottom of the wall. Since we have already labeled the material as well as the wall type, that means no matter where we are in a project environment, if this type of wall would show up again, or if that type of material would show up again, it will know what it should be tagged. So if we move our mouse up and select on Keynote, click on Element Keynote, then tag the wall, you'll notice that once again, it's a W5. And we no longer get that box that flies out at us. If we did the same thing with the material keynote, we can see EIFS is our material. And you can hit escape a couple of times on the keyboard to get out of that last command. Now, the final kind of keynote that we can do is if we come up here to Keynote and then do a user-defined keynote. We can pick where we would like it on the wall. And in this case, I'm going to zoom back up here toward the top of the wall. Then spin the wheel on the mouse to zoom back in. And I will pick just somewhere along this wall. I'll click once. Now the special thing about a user-defined keynote is not only do you get to select it off of a list, but it's a one-time thing. So you can have as many user-defined keynotes as you want, and it doesn't matter how many times you select that object, it will always give you the option to pick a different keynote off of the list. So if we click, then click again to place it, we now have the ability to come in on the list and then just choose something here off of the list. For this example though, there's not really the right material I want for this keynote, so I'll just select the 07000 off the list. And we can see that it's also called Division 7 Thermal and Moisture Protection. If we click on OK to this, we can see this is now the keynote 07000. That's the same number that was on the list. If we hit escape a couple of times, we can get out of the command. Now, if we would rather this said the text instead of the number, these keynote tags allow us to do that as well. So if we select on the 07000, come over here to Keynote. Underneath Properties, click on the Type Selector list, then choose Keynote Text off of the list. And now we can see that we have the text instead of the tag. So by doing this, we have 3 different ways that we can designate the way that materials or objects are tagged inside of the Revit environment. The first way is with an element keynote. The second way is by tagging the materials with a material keynote. And the third way is by defining a keynote with user keynote.